Hello, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and ex-honest wargamers to that 6+++ show. I'm your host Tom, very lowest of men, back once again to talk all things Warhammer 40,000. We've got a very special show tonight because we're joined by Chris has gone. He's gone off to Scotland or something. There was some driving, there were some mountains, but he's out of sight and out of mind, which means we can play in his absence. So we've brought in some special help to carry us through in his absence, and it is the lovely Logan. Logan, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for putting me on this podcast full of people that know what they're talking about. I don't know why I'm here, but hopefully I'll provide some use anyway.
I think it will be great fun. You are in many ways an expert of all things gaming, as we'll get into, and we're going to pick your brains on that. And you certainly aren't a slouch at 40k either. You do yourself a disservice. You do just fine. So this would be quite a fun one as well, because we're in speculation and we're just looking at 11th review anyway. Like, I've got no idea what's going on. You've got no idea what's going on. We're going to wildly speculate. You, the chat, can have your say as well. Let us know what you think. But of course, it's not just Logan. He's joined by his old mate Scrivo down below us where he belongs. Scrivo, how are you?
I'm alright. I am alright. Apart from not being able to potentially order any defilers for my customer base, I am fine. Yeah. Can't complain.
So the defiler's in demand, huh?
Yeah, it sounds like that datasheet has tickled everyone's fancy, and we probably will see 2 of them in every chaos-based faction list at minimum, I imagine.
It depends what they cost, right?
Yeah, points will surely be a lot. But they just look great, and it's just a big chunky boy, and again, it flies faster than an Eldar army, so that's quite nice if you want to go through walls.
It'll be pointed to sell, right? It'll be pointed to sell.
I hope not. I hope not, because we've had too much of that in the last 3 to 4 months.
I agree. And I think there is an element of the problem with if the Defiler's good is that's like 4 armies, isn't it? That all suddenly go up a gear, and that gets very stressful for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think every single Emperor's Children player on the planet is hoping that thing comes in under 250 points, because that is the windmill slam of all windmill slams then.
Yeah, completely. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see, but we'll just have to see how it all gets on. So what we'll do tonight is roll through a little bit of 11th reacting and thinking first, and then basically we had some discussion at the end of last show on sort of professionalization in 40k, and Logan is an expert on these things. So we're gonna revisit that conversation. I'm going to avoid saying anything completely ignorant about esports, and that Logan can educate me, and we'll move forwards on that.
I was literally at DreamHack in Birmingham this week gone.
Oh, wow.
The hub of esports.
Yeah, so then you'll have a lot to offer. And I think, let's say, with 40k as a game that's in change all the time, I think it's very useful then to think about where other games have gone and what that might mean for us, and what sorts of things we might like to see, what sort of things we might not like to see. And I think Logan's going to be really well placed for that. So if you have questions for Logan when we get to that stage of the day, do chuck them in as well. Obviously, as ever, if you want to support us with super chats, ask questions, shout us out, we'll directly respond whenever we can. And obviously do hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, sign up as a YouTube member, all those amazing things. We've got loads of people supporting us. We'd love to have a little bit more, so thanks very much for that. I'll shout out.
Please be generous with the super chats, because Scrivo has to find the money to afford my appearance fee. So.
Exactly, that's it. Yeah, Logan's handed us a huge bill just before the show started. We're all keeping a brave face about it, but obviously, financially ruinous for us, because we were trying to save up money to buy 15 defilers, which we now is in very much in jeopardy. And a yacht,
right?
Yeah,
that's why Scrivo hasn't got any for his customers. He's backdoored them all and pre-sold them on the black market at 3 times RRP.
That's exactly it. Scrivo knows how to make money in a starving meta. He's not afraid to do what it takes. Okay, so to shout out the chat, we've got Bumberclaw in, who is very pleased that Logan Sama plays Warhammer. James Viscosity is in. Valentin Pushkarov is in, suggesting there might be a data slate tomorrow. That's cool. 11th is hype. Roll on 11th. Ola Bankson says it will be pointed like the Twin Lance. Let's hope not. Letters from Lynx. GSC Gow is in. Good evening, guys, girls, and cultists. And then there's some talk about the lone op if units haven't arrived. Going to be brutal for shooting armies. I think we'll come to that in just a moment. There's definitely some interesting elements with that as well. And further Logan love. And then John Black is in. Evening, guys. Who is this new guy? So I guess as useful context for people who don't know you, Logan, tell us the story so that they know who they're dealing with.
I like Warhammer quite a lot, and I've done other stuff in other hobbies.
Yeah.
So people that are good in this hobby give me the time of day and talk to me, and I end up getting to be invited on shows like this, or shows like The Honest Wargamer, or hosting Allies of Convenience for 3 years. It's a throwback.
Yes. Yeah, so I hadn't realised you were involved in Allies of Convenience. That's obviously one of the OG podcasts that people refer to, right? With Robbo and others back in the day, and yourself. Mm-hmm. You obviously came to my attention on Honest Wargamer. I remember listening to Honest Wargamer. I think it was like in the Drakari meta in 9th. I was like, who is this burdened but intelligent man talking about why Drakari kill people to death? I like him. He sounds like a lot of fun, and he certainly knows what he's talking about. And obviously you guys were both on that show. What was it, 40k Adjacent show?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's the one. And I guess
Center.
You've referred very, I suppose, humbly to other hobbies that you've done stuff in, Logan. Do you want to unpack a little bit what exactly that was? Because it's quite a lot, isn't it?
I have. Well, to be fair, everything else that I've done came after Warhammer, because I got into Warhammer in 1993, and about 6 years after that, I started buying vinyl records. Did okay as a DJ. Yeah. So I've been DJing for 25 years now, nearly. A bit longer than that. In the grime scene, if anyone knows what grime is.
I absolutely love that.
my kitchen sink.
Yeah,
absolutely. All of that stuff. Scrape it off the back of your neck. That's where I am. So I've done that for a while, hosted successful radio shows, been around the world playing that. And in 2009, I discovered a game called Street Fighter 4, and my hyper focus latched onto that in the same way that it latched onto Space Marines and vinyl records. And since 2009, I've been involved in the fighting game community, both as a commentator and a presenter. So you'll catch me on such events as Evo and Red Bull Kumite, the Esports World Cup, and I've been doing that since 2010. So
and that's super cool. And I say that's a world I know literally nothing about. I think that's exactly where, as we think about how 40k is evolving and changing, those sorts of places might have some clues as to what that can end up looking like and how things can work. So that's what we'll be leaning on your expertise on later in the show as well. But I love the grime DJ background as well. I'm a sucker for any 40k people with a secret music background. I always think that's a good time. So that's lots and lots of fun. Valentin in the chat says grime is fucking awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean it's got a lot of kudos, doesn't it? It's serious business with Logan. Okay, fantastic. So our first segment, and you, the chat, can help us out with this, is going to be thinking over some of the sort of tease changes in 11th edition that we've had so far, but we can also talk about some of the tease models as well. Obviously, we've got Armageddon confirmed. We had a whole bunch of changes linked to that in terms of Yarick coming back, loads of cool new guard stuff, and then a Blood Angels versus Orcs box. So I suppose you are actually two men who might have quite a lot to say about that. If we start with the Blood Angels versus Orcs centric start point of the new edition, how did that get you two feeling?
Happy to see no blue, apart from dying. That was nice. Definitely tickled the right spots. Yeah, the fact that it was obviously Blood Angels centric made it way cooler for the chaplain with jump pack. That certainly wouldn't have hit the same if it wasn't. So and look, I love Space Marines, I love Power Armor, so every time there's a new edition release I'm spoilt because there's like 500 quid's worth of stuff for me to buy normally within the first month and a half. So like onto a winner, I guess. And the cinematics have been amazing for the last 3 editions. Really hype about that.
Yeah, they've got very polished at sort of building that edition hype, right? And the videos that show the models off and everything else. Scrivo, as an orc / whatever Space Marine I get my hands on main, how do you feel?
I really liked, especially the way that they've kind of played on the sentimentality as well. So when you look at the box art, there is a guy on the very left-hand side of the box of an orc with like some spiky helmet sort of action. It's straight from the second edition launch box. Well, the starter box that you could buy back when Logan was first kicking it about with the game, and it's really cool to see that kind of reflection, but more
No, no.
lovingly kind of updated and sympathetically. And I think it's kind of cool because as someone that's played Orcs since then as well, seeing them evolve, this feels like the next step. Like
Yeah.
you look at all of the Brian Nelson sculpts that they did in kind of 97 up to 99, and then kind of echoed that for a few editions.
I did
This
think
is now
that,
just
yeah.
a whole new look, and it's just like I'm not sure I'm in love with all of it already. Like some of the they previewed an Orc boy knob, and I looked at it and went, it's fine. But I think I'm playing that whole kind of it's out of my comfort zone a little
There's
bit.
there's a slight shift in some proportions and things as well.
Yeah.
aren't they? They look quite tall and lean.
They're less
They've
kind
always
of
been
gorilla
quite-
shaped.
They've always been quite hunched before, and I feel like there's going to be quite a lot of height on an Orc army. It does make me wonder. Making wild speculation, looking at models versus army feels at the moment. Orcs have been kind of a lot of stuff army. And this looks narrower, right? This looks like big guys, maybe slightly less of them potentially.
So the knob they've shown, based on the scale of it, it's a 40mm base. They're
Yeah.
currently on 32s.
Yeah.
The Orc War Boss that's somehow leaked,
Yeah.
that was on a 50mm base. They're currently on a 40mm base. So we're seeing that scale increase.
Yeah.
So we might see like something like Mega Knobs. If they do that, they'll be on a bigger base as well.
Yeah,
and it
yeah, yeah.
becomes maybe they're then more brutal but less of
cunning.
them, because that's the challenge we've had in this edition. Is like you shrunk the size of units, but they've not had the output. Like Orc
Yeah.
Boys going down to 20s is a change, and it's
Yeah, I mean, Old
Wasn't
Boys
they?
wouldn't necessarily be the example I'd pick, but I'm with you. And I
but they're
just
shrinking everything, so
I
it's
think
just like
there's definitely potentially a sort of smaller, punchier, brickier lads would be quite
Yeah.
fun. And I think one of the things about Orcs, whenever I see anyone try and collect them, and I count myself among them, is that you end up just hitting a wall with how much stuff you have to get in there. So
It's just
I'm quite
everywhere.
excited. I think if they can make it slightly more elite. In all the right places,
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really cool. And these models do look great. What do you think of the bike guy?
Oh, sorry. I was also happy to see on the boy the overslung shooter, so that
Oh yeah,
with everything now, so you don't have like a box where half of them can be with the chopper loadout and half of them with the useless shoot mode.
my shooter boys that I built in 1999 have been on the table once since I got back into the
Yeah.
hobby. So it's
Yeah.
nice that there's a purpose to them.
yeah, 100%. So that's all massively cool. I think from a keeping it interesting standpoint, I'm really glad Blood Angels are in there, not Ultramarines. I think we've had a lot of Ultramarines lately, and I think Blood Angels have very compelling lore, are really exciting. They're the kind of style of Marine play that I like, which is go fast and hit things. So I think I think that's really cool. And again, I think obviously we've seen some fleshing out of Space Marine chapters. I think it'd be amazing, and they're already kind of teasing towards that with Iron Warriors. If some of the other special chapters start getting fleshing out, both the good and the bad, the game gets even more diverse, albeit much more power armored once again, and that's really exciting, I think, as well.
Because from a lore standpoint, we've seen a lot of Ultramarine progression this edition,
Just loads, absolutely.
and
tons.
Blood Angels were the other side of the malediction. So them coming down to Armageddon, which is on the Ultramarine side, suggests that we're going to see some more things moving forward, which might mean that we might see things like they've had the tease of the Lion talking to Gilliman, so maybe there's going to be some more progression, not just that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did we feel about all the guard changes? Because they've got new vehicles, they've got Yarick, they've got all sorts coming.
All of that and no Catachans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it feels like they're holding the Catachans back. You know, there's going to be a whole wave of things. I mean,
How can you do the Red Terror in a Kill Team box and it's not Catachans?
I know.
I don't understand.
They're just teasing it. So that's the end of a cycle for a season, for like a year for Kill Team. They always do all these weird little splash boxes. So maybe next season's box of terrain, rather than like we had, the first box was the Volcus stuff, which is like city ruins. Then they went to the Necron Tomb World. Maybe the next one is the jungle shit, finally. Maybe we're finally getting something outdoors terrain-wise. That's what I'm thinking.
True.
So maybe it's the foreshadowing of that, but you never know.
Yeah, it did definitely felt strange that those weren't Catachans, but I feel like they're saving it and they'll go even bigger with Catachans in the future, right? And then there was a whole thing around Steel Legion where they've alluded that there'll be Steel Legion. So they were like paint the Krieg like Steel Legion initially, and people lost their minds.
I refuse to believe any narrative other than the fact that trailer dropped and the internet hated the fact there were no Steel Legion, and they immediately told their design team to get the iPads out and sketch something right away. There's no way. There's no way they had that back. Oh yeah, no, we've got them. Really, they're on it. Don't worry.
I love it, and it's
Don't
just
believe it.
that just some drawings. It's like, look, we drew it, so it's
Yeah.
real.
We
Don't
give
you
them
worry.
a new symbol for their flags. It's fine, guys.
Yeah, it's not one I was massively bothered about. Like, I don't mind painting some Kriegers Steel Legion. There's not a huge amount of difference, right? They're slightly more. They look a little
Weirdly,
bit
it's
more.
the other way round. The original Deathcore Krieg paint scheme was a suggestion of how to paint your Steel Legion figures.
There
So it's
you
a full
go.
fucking circle. It's
There you
brilliant.
go. What a tangled web, eh? But Guard feel like they must now be one of the best served armies of like the last probably 4 years at this point. They've been incredibly well treated in terms of
I was very
releases.
surprised that they got more vehicles.
Yeah, in terms of rules, releases, vehicles. Yeah, I'm very. It's just like, oh god, even more cheap.
But I guess
vehicles
the
push out.
Chimera's ancient now, but the
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Taurox doesn't feel old, but I guess the Taurox is kind of from that wave of 40k where, like, if you're in
Yeah.
your 30s, it doesn't feel old, but it is probably actually quite dated now.
yeah,
Early 2010s, right? It could be
Yeah,
like
so that's like
yeah.
yeah.
crazy old.
And I guess it is just one of those things where it's like, given the like near complete redo on the non Lehman Russ stuff, it's like that's just where they're going to go with it. I do quite like the little mid-sized ATV type things, but just God, so many tanks, so many people on the board.
Yeah, I love the little Saladin with the wheels.
The wheels. I really like it.
Super cool. It's tiny as well. When I saw the FOMO box,
Yeah,
you can see how small it is. I think that's super cool.
yeah,
It's,
I think
it's,
definitely.
it's interesting because it then encourages guard players not to just do the two extremes of either just infantry or just armor. It gives you that weird
Yeah.
flexibility that
There's
other
like a
armies have.
mid-range size.
Look at like GSC and Votan's vehicle ranges. Guard didn't have that kind of smaller, medium-sized stuff, so then maybe they're plugging that for everyone eventually.
Yeah, for sure, definitely possible. So I think there's lots to be excited about there.
It's almost like Guard are supposed to use combined arms.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Not sure where that idea would come from.
No, it's just grizzled companies is what you need to field with them, right? Just bullgrin.
Recon element, Scrivo. Recon element.
Thanks very much for our couple of super chats, by the way. James Viscosti wants Scrivo to do a handstand for £2. I don't think we can make him do that again. You did it
I
before.
can't. I
think
tried
We'll
to.
break him if we make him do it again. Bonsai
I
Kitchen
can't in my office.
says the new terrain rule hurts my Anvil Desolators, and that is a perfect segue into the rules previews that as we have had them now. This is obvious that you never get the full picture, right? It's so hard to read things together on these little bits, but obviously there are a ton of things. I think
When has having the full picture ever been a prerequisite for nerds to be angry on the internet?
I'm outraged.
yeah, the nice thing about getting angry now is we can then get angry again in a different way when we know what the full picture is. So there's no reason
Dopamine flows.
Yeah, exactly. There's no reason to deny.
Corn cares where not.
Yeah. And there was, I think, on the scale of change, I wasn't quite expecting it to be so ambitious. I think in terms of the rules changes, you are talking massive, right? It feels more like 9th to 10th than it does 8th to 9th in terms of the range of things that they've gone after with their changes. How do you guys feel about it?
Do you want to go first, Scrivo?
I was blown away that they went, we'll get rid of these horrible round circle things that you've all got printed. I was relieved because from a kind of an aesthetic choice of a tabletop, they are pretty guff. But how they're trying to execute it, I'm nervous about because we've seen 3 bits of cardboard shaped footprint. It's no different really, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, quite interesting, I think. And I mean, if we
I never had any problem with the big ground circles because they weren't technically part of the game. The actual thing that's part of the game was a 40mm round.
yeah.
Interest. We just started using the ground circles because it meant we didn't have to individually measure each time. It was for convenience.
Yeah.
I get you.
And obviously it became so popular that Games Workshop started selling them themselves.
I bet they were selling them at Adepticon and they suddenly stopped selling them very well afterwards.
I fucking hope they weren't selling it with Dexcon. That would have been awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never really had a problem with it. The issue is just that the game is entirely built around MDF L-shaped ruins, which it had to be because the level of destrosicity.
Lethality, yeah.
Exactly. It was definitely not less lethal for on launch it wasn't less lethal. So not that those ruins mattered for the towering giants that dominated the launch of 10th anyway. But
God.
the tables look bad because the terrain is super limited in terms of its functionality. There's only really use for ruins, and that's it. So they haven't managed to write rules that made anything else of any value putting on there. No one cares about any kinds of terrain other than that. So I understand in terms of that, they're still keeping the footprint model, which they've used for the perspex plates on Games Workshop layouts. So they're kind of keeping that idea.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I guess that is why they're pairing that with another change that I presume you'll probably talk about, which is the Lone Up 15.
Yes. Yeah. So I think if in terms of the objective, I guess the things I would say is what I actually like about it is I do think from an immersion standpoint there is real potential with the bases that look like just the floorboards and the scenery and key things, and there might even be scope for converting things up into that. We'll see how ambitious people are able to get.
And selling different sets.
And selling different sets is always good for them.
Hold of value, yeah, of course.
But I think I quite like the suggestion of asymmetry with it as well. I like that they're not all the same. Like the objectives as we've seen them, not all the same size. I think the idea that you might have different maps where there's different size objectives in different places, these sorts of things, that's quite interesting to me. Because it's just radically different to where we're at now in terms of the mappability of everything. If I head this way, there's this much circle. If I head this way, there's this much circle. It all gets very mappable very fast.
Yeah, and I guess combined with the tease of potentially different primaries being generated by the types of armies you're bringing, creates this weird element that kind of look and go,
that in a moment, because that's obviously I have a particular perspective for looking at that. We'll talk about that in a moment. I think
from my perspective that I've perceived messaging coming from Games Workshop, the Games Workshop events team specifically as well. They don't like the aspect of 40k play that involves people practicing opening moves.
Yes.
They actively avoid. That was why Mike Brandt didn't want specific layouts with terrain at the same point. And that would kind of lean into this idea. And also, of course, the Games Workshop open events don't publish what missions and layouts they use in advance, so you can't tailor for it. They are generally, as a company, averse to this idea that practicing the game in that way is not how they want you to be good at the game.
Yes.
I can see that generating not random pairings, but far more numerous pairings of missions and layouts, and as you said, the various different types of shapes and sizes of objectives that there can be, would lean more into that. Okay, we're playing layout 1 and it's going to be, tipping point. I know that like the back of my hand. I know exactly. I know exactly what my first turn move is going to be. It doesn't matter what my opponent is. And then we're all doing chess openings, and the game plays on from turn 2. I think they're trying to avoid that as much as possible.
I agree.
And I understand that. I don't agree with that as a perspective, but I feel like there's a happy middle ground, and I'm very interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I always felt with ninth was very schematic in terms of how armies played and what they did, and I did find that quite boring. And this edition slightly less so, but still, as you say, people are very well drilled, and I think this just adds more variables, doesn't it? It's not. I'm sure people will still have their moves and their playthroughs and their things. It's just that they're clearly on a mission to add lots more variables to that.
There's a really good kind of comparison to how they approach this in Kill Team. So all their Kill Team maps are asymmetrical. So you have to play knowing you could be on one or the other side.
Oh, I love that.
Both teams have got their own secondary missions they could play from, of which they pick one that's in secret. So you have these elements that you're both playing a different mini game on a map that you might be on one side or the other. So it's kind of feeling that same sort of vibe. So that really works in Kill Team, and it's actually been quite successful across 2 editions.
How does that work in terms of being balanced?
The secondaries themselves, the tack up you do, if they're too successful and too good, they tend to tone them down a little bit. But the maps, generally, there's out of like the 6 variations you have of a map, normally TOs avoid maybe like one of them. But generally, they're actually pretty good for Games Workshop. And it's just like, because it's so small, because it's a quarter of the size, I think there's a lot less to go wrong with when they design them. So I'm hopeful based on the fact that they may have learnt from that as a smaller sort of thing, and then they're scaling it up. But we'll have to see. So
Yeah,
but it's a
absolutely.
similar analogy type of thing. So
Yeah, completely. And I think that it is one of those things where we'll have to see how it all fits together. I think I agree with you, Logan, that Brant's vision is always... But Brant likes to introduce more chaos and unknowability and try and have that sort of turning up and experiencing the game feeling. And I do think for casual games, this, in that sense, presumably works quite well.
I just got a PTSD jump scare from letters from links in the chat. By the way.
Yeah, so that super chat says limited player place terrain / objectives returns. Oh, interesting. So what you're suggesting, maybe people will be putting their own stuff down. That's interesting.
I'm going to sit on my hill and die on it.
Player place was a bit, always felt like it punished.
I'm going to turn my big L round this way.
No. Thank
you. We'll see how they go with it. You might not be wrong. My experience always hurt weaker players. I don't feel like that's their goal with this. I don't
think they realise it hurt weaker players. By the way,
you might be right.
It was an extra lose condition before you'd even started the game, which unfortunately
you'd even see it at a club night, right? You'd see two people of varied skills. One absolutely claps the other one because they have a slight edge there. And
player steps up the midboard and there's nowhere to hide. I've seen.
Well, the famous one was the tower player puts down your big ruin facing outwards so that you can't
yeah, exactly. Those are vintage classic errors, but we'll see on this. I guess, I mean, to move it to just couple with a couple of the things we discussed, 15-inch loan op or something for units that haven't activated, that's very your team as well. That's a big change.
We don't know what kind of units though,
so that all we can go now is word for word what they said. And I'm going to take everything with a pinch of salt because the guys that are saying it weren't reading it off a script. And I do not take Eddie and Adam as people that understand the minutiae of Warhammer 40k rules to the point that they can convey them perfectly. So there may be a small degree of miscommunication. But as I understood it, units were hidden until they activated. So you basically just couldn't shoot.
If they were within terrain, not wholly within as well, which was something
if they were benefiting from terrain, I believe is what the specific wording was. So that would imply that it's great for melee armies. They just stage, they don't shoot you, and then they just give you the bum's rush. But that depends, how capable you are of traversing the midboard anyway, because we've got complete obscuring in this edition of the game, and people still can't get from UKTC midboard ruins to the opponent without getting blasted to pieces without 21 inches of movement as it is. So
yeah, completely. I think it's interesting. I think, as some have said, it stops you being shot off the board round one. It definitely encourages more proactive pushing into each other kind of play. I think it makes screening a lot easier because you can screen in relative safety. It will make that pre-measuring all the more important for knowing where people can reach you, because I think 15 inches is actually not that safe. Into anything with a bit of speed and guile. A lot of the activations in the game at the moment happen comfortably within that distance.
I don't think I've been shot by a Tau army at a range of over 15 inches.
Yeah, exactly that.
Recently, so.
To take recent examples of Montcar, they are shooting you comfortably within that range. But it certainly does mean it opens up more interesting deployment options where you could be deployed. It doesn't all have to be hidden behind a wall. You could have different kinds of terrain involved. And that's where I'm still very...
And that's the great thing, right? Making more types of terrain viable, not just ruins for blocking line of sight. This
is the huge thing, And if it comes with a bunch of preset types of different terrain and different settings, I'm actually really here for it, because I'm always very jealous of the kill team boards that look beautiful, have so many different options. It's just going to be all about how well balanced and designed those are. And
I feel like Games Workshop are a little bit to blame though, because they haven't really put any effort into selling like a coherent terrain kit for
a long time. I bought Moonbase Clysis, didn't I, John? Do you remember that?
My one bad
you
sell
must have
to
been
Tom.
Effing delighted to sell me that. As like he as soon as he's played one game, he'll never want this.
I can't lie, but my Moonbase Clysis is currently available on eBay right now, sealed in the box.
Damn right.
So
I had a lot of fun with that with my Death Guard back in the day.
Those were fun times.
But
The
it feels like a no-brainer for them, right, to have sort of a few different fixed mission setups for sale.
Yeah. Because they don't currently offer a table's worth of terrain when you actually look at what there is.
No.
That's fit for purpose, because all the bunkers and stuff, they're really cool. They released them, was that end of 9th, early 10th? With the bunkers and the walls. Practicality in the rules, those walls mean nothing, right? At best, you get benefit cover.
Do you mean like the Imperial
compound stuff.
Bastion and the defense line?
Yeah, but they actually do terrain where it's like the hab block, like the small square rectangular like buildings.
I'm too
like
old.
The walls go around it, and then
I'll
like
be talking about Sky Shield landing pads next.
all right, Dad. You mean the one that you could print in White Dwarf, like get in your White Dwarf and cut out of cardboard?
No, not that one.
The little cathedral. But yeah,
I do like the functionality of knowing that you're not going to get shot in your deployment zone turn.
I like that.
For me, like all this hand wringing about shooting armies are dead and it's going to be all melee, all forward. Like as you said, Tom, 15 inches is not that
it comes
much.
at risk, which is nice.
No, exactly, and I think it's just what they want, and I think the missions and the secondaries have done this in recent times. They just want an active game where everything's in there fighting with everything else.
And looking at Games Workshop tournament layouts, it makes sense that
So you'll definitely help them with that. Yeah, rather than getting fire prisoned all the way down the middle there. I think there's loads of exciting stuff there. If we're thinking about some of the more micro changes, we've obviously got roll your charge before you decide where you're going. That's fun. That's a bit scary.
So fun.
So that is not a huge deal. It is a huge deal if you high roll.
Yeah.
So it gives you that kind of casino element of it, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to have to go for I'm forced to go for this crappy 4-inch charge when really I want to try and slingshot at that.
Yeah.
You can just roll it and go for your safe and set up. You can set up your two options basically.
A little bit more speculation, a little bit more continuous.
Very interesting thing for me though was the progression from pile in, fight.
Oh yeah. So that was army wide, right?
So, as a certified melee enthusiast, listening to that, my first thoughts are this: I can't cascade anymore.
Yeah.
So, if I have no fly, and you string out some Gretchen in front of me, my World Eaters are going to hit the Gretchen, and every unit has to pile in, and then every unit fights.
Yeah.
There is no piling in after killing the Gretchen. The same thing is true for transports, where I can't kill the Rhino and then my next unit cascades and piles into the units transported in. That would be a huge deal if the consolidate phase didn't come after the fight phase. Because what happens now in our current edition is I consolidate into you and then you get free swings on me, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's great if I'm just trying to tag your shooting units so that you can't, you have to waste your fallback and do something stratagem or you don't have one or whatever.
Yeah.
Now I can pile into I can consolidate into your melee units. It's after the fight phase, so you don't get to swing on me. Now you're tagged. And if you notice, what they did say was fights first doesn't work in the fights first stage. Now the controlling player activates first in the fight's first stage. They specifically didn't say that anything changed about we're all just activating at normal, no one charged phase, which would mean if my melee unit kills your Rhino, piles in or kills, here's an example for you, Tom. It kills your nasty Dark Eldar paper thin thing full of witches.
Suffered enough, yeah.
I kill them, you get out, then I consolidate into your witches. You don't get to fight me.
Yeah.
You also don't get to fight before me in your turn unless you charge me with something else. So it's not as bad as I first thought, but it is going to need for a completely different approach, much in the same way that 10th needed a different approach from 9th. Where you had...
That's where, again, I'm surprised because it just seems so ambitious. And there's a lot of change there. And it feels like the fight phase will have a whole bunch of different interactions once again to figure out. I mean, combat players love that about a new edition, right?
I mean, combat is the most skill expressive way of playing 40K anyway.
Yeah, it's the best bit.
So they gave us an example of something you can do if your transport's charged as well. They said you could get out immediately in response, but you would be battle shocked. So that means you can't then, if there's a stratagem to interrupt, you wouldn't be able to interrupt, but you'd then be potentially in the combat.
Yep.
So
yeah, so you can charge out of the transport, but you might face penalties like battle shock. That's quite fun. I think an end to the sort of wrapping type era, maybe. Feels like they've tried to work on that.
I mean, you can still wrap so that there's no space to get out.
Yeah.
Still, I presume you'd still have to desperate escape, which would be a different thing then. I mean, if you can desperate escape into combat as well, that would be very difficult, because then you'd also fight before that unit anyway, because it wouldn't get to charge.
Yes.
Etc.
And then the only other one that jumped out immediately was leaders' abilities just staying on units.
I think that's a simplification thing, because there was a lot of questions about stuff like Khan in a unit of berserkers and fighting on death. Does he get reroll ones when he fights on death? Like, let me ask my legal friend to ask, So I think go on. Sorry, Scriven.
And it wasn't consistent across books either. You'd have, say, early books where it was like, it would clearly say if you're leading a unit, and then by halfway through they started saying this model's unit. And it was just like, okay, so but they weren't pointed differently as a response to that, perhaps. But it just felt inconsistent, and it was frustrating if you had an earlier book, I think.
I feel like what they're doing is they're trying to introduce as much to simplify common sense interpretations of all of these interactions where they can. Whether they succeed in it or not, I'm not sure. Yeah. But I think that's kind of... If I lead a unit... Oh, I think they also said that you have to put down which units you're attached to
in your list, yeah.
Well, yeah.
So I think that's very, very interesting in that sense, and it's just all change, all go. James Biscotti has hinted towards one strat per unit per phase. Yeah, they said they're going to go against stacking buffs. So I think that's probably okay.
That seems like a bigger hit to melee than shooting, because I need in the fight phase, I will theoretically need offensive and defensive strategies in the fight phase. Yes. Whereas if you're shooting, you only need offensive strategies. You don't need to defend yourself in your own shooting phase. So for me, that read as slightly disadvantageous to melee units, unless we're absolutely killing the thing that we touch.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I think there's lots going on there. And then detachment-wise, we've still got detachments. They're not going away. Sounds like there's going to be more flexibility with detachments. That's a can of worms. We'll see how they handle that.
Yeah. 70 new and updated.
Yeah, goodness gracious, at launch. So that's like a couple per army, something like that, right? That's very, very wild. And that will, I say, the customization. We wanted a bit more customization. How effective that will be remains to be seen. And,
that reminds me of like the old detachments in, was it 8th, where you had like, let me just plug in a Skyhammer, whatever it's Skyhammer.
Here's
and
my Outriders for my bikes. Yeah.
100%. John Black asks, what's the safe age of model before they're likely to legend stuff?
Who knows these days?
7 years, because that's how long Gravis Calgar existed for.
Yeah, I think you can just... It's a bit arbitrary at times. I guess if we're thinking of what they're going to take aim at, looking at the release, probably the very old guard of the Marine stuff is going to go now, right? You'd think, like your Razorbacks, your Devastators, your Tacticals probably feel like they might be on the way out.
I think anything that's not Primaris, you have to accept that like, this is very likely
that was always on borrowed time, and bits of it survived for a long time.
I very much expect them to redo Rhinos and Land Raiders this edition, though. Very much.
My feeling would be based on how like the classic tanks have been this edition, which has been very good, that they're probably in the firing line and probably it's time for them to go, right?
But I do think they're going to resculpt, because they're in so much of the media. If you watch that Warhammer Plus trailer with all the various different Space Marine animations in it, they're in a lot of and it's outside Warhammer world, for God's sake. They haven't switched it over to an Impulsor yet, so I think they will probably and of course Chaos, like, they need a Rhino anyway.
Yeah, they're not going to get rid of that. And the cinematic shows a revised land speeder, which when you really zoom in quickly, it does just look like the old land speeders. So despite them doing storm speeders, despite them doing a repulsor executioner, they still are going to go back to those, I think, because there is a need.
Exactly the same, but it had the updated weapon, right? The onslaught.
Yeah, it had an onslaught Gatling cannon, which just looks sick.
Yeah, pretty cool. Really nice. You know, the shades of the old assault cannon land speeder, the old metal one from back in the day.
Yeah, 100%. James asks, getting rid of Grotman's detachments. One imagines so. I would imagine those go.
I think they'll be in some of the revised. I think some of
Yeah,
them are so
a
like
fair few of them.
defining.
Yeah, so
Like,
that's it. If there's like ones, some of them sort of are like the one for their
Yeah.
army. I could see some of them surviving in a reskinned form, right?
Grey Knights are having a hard enough time as it is. Like,
Get rid of
Warbane.
Warpbane. No, just get it gone.
Oh yeah, fuck Warpbane off. Yeah, Grey Knights. Oh goodness gracious, yeah, absolutely. Who even knows? We'll see. But yeah, there's tons to be excited about. I think for me, I was going to say from a trying to play at a WTC perspective, you're like, oh,
It's chaos.
good grief, because you'll have a.
So you've never experienced this, have you?
No, I haven't. But
Oh,
if you're looking at, you're thinking from a diff standpoint or a matrixing standpoint, and they've told you, oh, every matchup will be different.
yeah.
It's completely bananas.
It's already a mess anyway. Because
Yeah. That's it.
Second. Like, it's a complete mess.
It's going to be the Wild West, right? Which is very exciting, but also very, very daunting. And I think at this stage, what I have to comfort me is the fact that this current meta is so awful that I'm just excited for change. So I think
Are you going hard for the squad this year, or are you?
I'm in that position now where I have less time than I had the previous year, but obviously I'm better known. I'm definitely competing. I've got home nations coming up for that, and then we'll know in the next few
Coasting on your name brand now, are you?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm trying as hard as I can with the.
I heard you said that you don't have to play TTS games. Actually, that's what I heard.
That's
now
different, YouTuber.
Now you're a big content.
Yeah. They made very special exceptions for me because
that's what I heard.
I asked nicely. Yeah.
Now sell me your skin tight T-shirt.
Oh, you can have one of ours, but they are skin tight. They are very, very tough. Oh dear. So I mean, I think as far as 11th goes, I don't. There's a ton of other stuff still to come. There's all sorts in flux. I think it's very exciting. I think it will. I would genuinely say it looks like a huge overhaul. So I think people are going to have to be in the weeds for months to figure this all out properly. And that's a good time, and it's a daunting time. And then 3 detachments are more powerful than everything else in the game at release, so that's always fun. But we'll all get through it together. So I think that should be a really interesting.
I have fun working that out in 3 weeks before.
Oh, I'm going to be really excited. Really excited. And
is it summer holidays? When do your summer holidays?
It is summer holidays, which helps.
Oh.
So that's my best hope here is that we're going to be sat on the computer.
On the downside, as John B said, you won't be able to get your students to run all of the.
No. Sadly, I can't file them out. All right, fantastic. What we're going to do now is move into thinking about professionalizing games and leaning a little bit on Logan's advice because it prompted some questions chatting with him after last week's show. And I'm very curious, and not just because I slagged off esports, but because I think in general Logan has seen this process before for other games, right?
Yeah.
And I think one thing we commented on, one thing I know you had opinions on, Logan, was sort of the increasing commoditization and professionalization of the 40k game. I was actually very struck as I watched Innis win his latest super major. I guess Innis is probably at the moment one of maybe 2 in the UK genuinely sort of full-time, always active on the circuit professional players. There are a few others, but Innis is certainly one these days where the hobby is his whole livelihood, right? And we're seeing he wins and he wins and he wins and he wins. One assumes there will be more such players in the future, but also what you have is much bigger events, increasing media attention, GW trying to get more of their own slice of the pie again as well. And I guess I was going to invite you, Logan, to comment on how have you seen this play out for other games that you're intimately involved in, and what kinds of things might we expect, do we think, in the next few years down the line for our beloved Warhammer 40k?
So there's 2 ways that this affects the community. And the first one is the most obvious one, which is the biggest pitfall I see for Warhammer, which is prize support. I don't think that there is a way that you can maintain the community spirit and the overall togetherness that you have when you introduce regularly large sums of money specifically and only handed out based on your in-game results in a game that so specifically relies on cooperation for it to function and not fall apart. We've already seen what a nonsense this game is with the very, very, very famous Inari versus Inari LVO. When this game is it's not a collaborative experience, it's a gotcha experience.
Yeah.
This game is not made to be like that.
Yeah.
You can do this in games that are effectively a digital environment, which would be card games. That's one, because they have a set of instructions, you have an order of operations. There is not really any kind of room for disagreement or interpretation, and if there is, there's a book this thick on rulings for like Magic the Gathering, for example. You can do it in stuff like Blood Bowl, because again, that is a digital, effectively. I don't have to agree with you whether this is at this range or this, a matter of half a millimeter is not going to determine like an 8-point swing that could be the result of the game, and I get 15 grand and you get 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see that being possible, especially because I existed in a time in 4th edition where I saw hard dice down at Warhammer World that resulted in people playing. Did you play musical chairs at a child's party when you were?
Yeah.
Did you
Still
ever
do.
remember people walking really slowly past the chair, waiting for the music to stop?
Yeah.
Now imagine hard dice down,
Yeah.
and there's no chess clocks.
Yeah.
So, top of turn 5. Well, I'm going to take 75 minutes to complete my turn. That led to fistfights in the car park, actually, at Warhammer World. I've seen fistfights in the car park at Warhammer World. I don't want to get into a world in which that's ever a possibility, because this game entirely relies on collaboration and cooperation, and nothing breaks that down more than there being significant amounts of money on the line. That being said, you mentioned Innis, and that is a perfect example. I'm really glad you mentioned Innis, because he, much like guys like Nick and John Lennon, they monetize this hobby through being really, really good at the game and sharing that ability.
Exactly.
Rather than directly monetizing the results that they get.
Yeah.
Because then you get into situations where I got to the grand finals of WCW. I lost again. I came second. This sucks now. All my plans I had for this year's finances are in the drain. I actually did see that recently with some fighting games have enormous prize pool, literally $1 million for the winner.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
You know what the person who came second won? So $1 million for first place. You're playing 1 versus 1 in grand finals.
Yeah.
You win, you get $1 million. The guy that finished second got 100 grand, which is great. It's a huge amount of money, but the disparity is crazy.
Yeah.
So, like the heartbreak of getting that far.
Yeah.
I don't want to introduce all of that. I don't think it's good, but I think it's great that people are able to build these communities and share. That's positive. Like that, you're creating something in terms of what you're doing with your skills. You're democratizing your ability. You're not hoarding it. That's the first problem, prize money.
Yeah.
The second problem is the commodification of the game itself. And what you do see in esports is publisher control.
Right.
They want to own the ecosystem. They want to completely control every which way in which people are allowed to interact with this game. Now, that is doable in esports because you have to broadcast their product. Legally, you're broadcasting their assets that they have created. They have to give you permission to stream the game, right? Normally community events, they just let them get off of it. But if you're say for example, you wanted to set up a League of Legends tournament tomorrow, and you went and spoke to this company, and you managed to get together a 1.5 million sponsorship deal, Riot is going to knock on your door and go, hang on, wait a minute, you're utilizing our IP. No, cease and desist. Games Workshop legally can't do that because you don't actually have to use any of their IP at all in a broadcast.
Yeah.
You are legally allowed to broadcast people putting models that they have painted on a table. You don't have to use their logos. You don't have to use any of that. There's no way that they can stop you broadcasting the Warhammer tournament. So that's great. But the more that they do get involved, if they lean on people and control the space, you end up with a lack of options, a lack of choice in the marketplace. And we all love playing this game in different ways, be it teams, different terrain setups, going back to different FAQs and rule sets, etc., etc. And I think that is a big danger in terms of this game getting bigger, big GW getting more involved, but in a controlling way rather than
constraining
a labeling way. Yes, exactly. So they're my two concerns.
Yeah, I think those are concerns I shared when we talked about it last week, and I think that's exactly where this can go wrong, right? As you get a toxic upper tier competitive culture where money distorts it and makes it even worse because it's already one that battles to be what it should be, and money is going to make the worst out of people. And then, as you say, the other thing is that we might actually lose that. One of the incredible things about 40k right now is that it's created communities and hubs and spaces all around this country. There's an energy and a camaraderie and a welcomingness to it that I think is very rare. And if that becomes massively streamlined and consolidated into a few places, then you lose an awful lot of what's exciting about that. I think at the moment I feel like it straddles. They're straddling it in quite an interesting way. I talked about World Champs last week. I like the idea of that you can have, look, we're running this massive event. All those other events out there in the world, we're celebrating those. You get a ticket, you go to ours, whatever else. As long as it sits sort of in tandem with and in collaboration with the wider gaming community, I'm
even with all that, it's still not the most important event in the world. The most important event in the world is happening in Mechelen this year.
Yeah.
Not happening in Barcelona. So that's great as long as that stays.
Yeah, as long as that stays, exactly.
All good. I'm happy for it being an alternative.
And I think it's funny because we've talked about the 11th changes, and there may be an example in this based on what we've seen: new objectives, radically different missions. There may well be part of the design of this edition is an attempt to have a tighter control over how the missions look, how the game looks, how easy it is for others to replicate.
Yeah.
Which would be definitely going in that direction we've talked about that is a bit more concerning, right?
Yeah, I know for a fact corporately that they do want everyone playing off the same hymn sheet. So
yes. Yeah. And that in itself, I think, again, you lose the wonders of GW terrain, UKTC, WTC. It's been fun having all those different ecosystems.
I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if they were providing a format that everyone willingly wanted to adopt. We haven't been in that position yet. Like playing pure Games Workshop out the book with their layouts and their missions we haven't got to a point, I think, where everyone is happy with that. And I've going before 10th, I've never experienced. I've never, I don't think, played 40k as an out of the book experience. There's always been some kind of community FAQ or modification or something like that. So if they can provide a version of the game, everyone's like, yeah, do you know what? This is the best. We'll all play this. I think it would not as a community, but it's unlikely.
Yeah.
When it happens, it's fascinating. So, again, going back to the Kilting example, the first edition of the current version, people made their own maps. And there was very much community-led ones from content creators that everyone played to because it was the only way to play it.
Yeah.
This edition, everyone just plays out the book. And it means that when you go to an event, you're not playing a different iteration of the game, a different thing with different rules. You just know what you're going for. And that, as a gamer, from the outside coming into that kind of competitive scene, there's no obstacles. Yeah. And that is fascinating. And that's one thing we kind of miss with like the 40k scene is like, if you don't understand the mission, like the terrain pack, it can be quite a shock, right? Like when I first went to events, I went from playing on the same 5 ruins to suddenly this weird hodgepodge of MDF terrain. That's a bit of a culture shock, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there is a middle ground, as I say. I think that's where the MDF, the immersion of some of the other terrain sets is definitely less. And I do think there's a way to integrate GW-type model terrain into the game in a way that, as I said, and again, I always look with such jealousy at Kill Team events and all the lads playing on those boards, and they just look so stunning. And whenever I've been to a GW event and played, again, all their boards are painted, there's different themes, you could be on a different type of map. I like that a lot. I've got a lot of time for it. There's just a balancing act to get it right.
The core rules for the terrain have to support that is why it works in Kill Team.
Yeah. And for I think the other thing, when we mentioned it already, but if you were going to professionalize the top of the game more, and I know this is more of a UK TC thing than a GW thing, but I think both will look to do this more in the future. The amount and the quality of referees just has to be so much higher, right? Like so much higher. I think you're talking like refs at table for all undefeateds who have world-class game knowledge is kind of where you need to be in your day twos to achieve anything like that.
Absolutely, but also I'm a big advocate for penalizing misplays.
Yes.
I don't think it is feasibly possible to prove intent on a misplay. So, regardless of whether you've played a list before and you've been to majors with that list, and the rule is very clearly written out in the detachment rule for that army that you're playing, and then you do something that is explicitly not permitted in that detachment rule, and you win your game because of it, because you end up on your opponent's home objective.
Yeah.
Why ever that happened needs to be an irrelevance. We need to penalize people for turning up to an event and not knowing their own rules.
Yes.
Now, the degree of penalty needs to scale based on where you are. If you're on the top tables after 3, 4, 5 rounds, 6 rounds, your event needs to effectively be completely invalidated. Because if you are good enough to be at that point, you should also be good enough to know your rules properly.
100%.
I'm not saying you need to know your opponent's rules like the back of your hand. That's the judge's job to pull up those kind of things, right? When things are not being played correctly. But if you misplay your own rules or core rules, people need to be penalized. The degree at which that happens, I don't want to see witch hunts. I want to see people encouraged to put the effort in to learn to play their army properly. If that stops people going, well, this week I'm going to play this army, and this week I'm going to play this army, and this week I'm going to borrow this army. If it stops people doing that, that is a welcome, casualty of making sure that you're not going to a tournament and spoiling someone else's experience. Because this is why I want people penalized properly for it. Because if you beat someone in a game and you misplayed your rules and that was a deciding factor in their loss, you've effectively ruined their weekend. And I don't think that's fair at all. So I want to hold people to higher standards of knowing.
Yeah, I think I like the distinction. I think between like people who are all the way through undefeated. I mean, the example that always comes to mind was John Lennon at Worlds, right, where he misplayed something and he essentially just took himself out of the running. Yeah, there's an extent to which I think
that's why he is held up.
Exactly.
Universally, John
there
Lennon
is a sort of there's a self-policing dimension for top players there, where it's like no one should be reaping the rewards or the high placings based on getting things wrong, and it's a sort of self-policing. But I think if there are penalties there,
but I also do want to make
people don't prosper at the top of the event, right?
I also do want to make sure that this isn't scary for people that are coming to their one tournament a month and they go, "Oh no, I forgot that this was."
Oh God, yeah. I don't. You don't want to hurt those
scale.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't want to scare people, but if we are talking about the ecosystem's getting bigger, people are getting rewarded more for winning, whether it's prize support or they're getting reputations or what have you. Events are costing more to go to. All of that, minis and armies are costing more to build and paint and assemble and carry around. Everyone's investing a huge amount to do all of this. I think it's not a huge ask to expect people to know their own rules and play them properly.
Yeah,
and I think that will make the experience better for everybody culturally, because then we don't just point fingers at the end of the event and go, "This guy's a cheater," or "Fuck this guy, I don't want this guy at the event," or I heard that this guy did this. No, it's just he misplayed. This is the penalty. Boom, there we go. And I
think the reality is we all misplay. I think, and so I think having having awareness of it, but then aspiring to have as top a level as we can, I think is really, really positive. Yeah. As Valentin says, at the very top, reputation is just so much more important than game wins, and that's completely true. We've got a few people who I think aren't necessarily interpreting the tone of what you're saying here in quite the right way, or dare I say, in good faith. So
it's very complicated, and I am not I haven't written this out as a proposal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And I think there's a way of balancing it in a sec. I think it's what we've got an eye on here is how do you manage that kind of emergent competing sort of top tier sporting people against each other, and how do you make sure you get a code of conduct and standard of conduct there?
I think the reality is when people make misplays, someone loses out, right?
Yeah.
At the moment, it's the person that didn't make the mistake is the person that
Yeah.
right? And I feel like that's weighted in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So if you're found to have misplayed something, you need to be penalised. Whatever that penalty becomes,
Yeah.
is something for people that are much more invested and much smarter than me, and have a much more they're much more in touch with the tone and what the community wants.
Completely.
But it needs to happen, because this is how you create an environment where the people with the wonderful reputations have them for the right reasons.
Yes.
The people that are held at the top, they have them for the right reasons, and we can be proud of people, like Inez, like John Lennon, that are paragons of the hobby. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bubblebeard says, first and foremost, even more than winning a tournament, should we not just be aspiring to have good games? Yeah, completely. That the GW side is very much on the side of he always prioritizes the play experience, and it's like Logan was saying, it's a collaborative game, right? It is a collaborative game between players.
Can I say as well? Sorry, I can see someone called 97420 Empire 3 in chat, and they've put a couple of points, and I specifically want to talk to you and people that feel the same way as you. You don't have to know every single rule. You will make mistakes. The penalty, specifically being penalised for making a misplay, is to not treat you like a criminal.
Yeah.
If you go in for a tackle in a football match and you mistime your tackle, you get yellow carded. You're not yellow carded because you're a dirty player. You're yellow carded because you committed a foul. And that's what I'm kind of get across, in that if you make a misplay, you have gained an advantage at the expense of your opponent. Therefore, we need to pull that advantage back somehow to make it fair. I specifically don't want to call people out as cheaters and criminals.
Oh yeah,
What I want to do is encourage people to come into the games and be as good as they can, as best as they can be. And if the people at the top are making misplays, they need to be held to a higher standard than the guys in the the 3 and 2 bracket that are just playing it out at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I fully agree. It doesn't sound like we've got a winner there in our communication, but we're trying, and I agree with you on that one. ATC40K says there are many things TOs work on all the time to make their events better from their previous event. It's difficult to get a lot of judges. Yeah, no, completely. And this is the reality is for these big events is that more judges, I think, would be a better investment in the short term than trying to pay their top players.
100%.
By far, because I know Gary, the other refs at UKTC, for example, those lads work exceptionally hard. They're fantastic, but they're in halls with 500 people.
Yeah,
it's very hard to manage that.
Yeah,
and they're lovely people.
You made a great point as well about active judging at your tables. I think that would be a great thing to see.
100%. If you could get to the point where those last few rounds are just fully active judged every time, I think you're in a very nice spot. So there's lots of interesting things to see with that. But as James says, difficult to ref with so many players in the tournament. Yeah, completely. I think that's always the issue, right? And I think that's where, as the game scales up, I think, again, the question becomes which things do you scale up? And then that's about what you prioritize. And I think, I would be keen to scale up the support and the community and all of the architecture around what makes it feel special for people, makes people feel supported, before I was scaling up the reward for the people who already get all the kudos of winning everything all the time. That's kind of where I'm at with it for now. And Bob says you can't hold people to different standards. If you're enforcing penalties for mistakes, how do you do that and take away the disadvantage the non-mistaken player now has?
I think you have to hold people to different standards, unfortunately.
Yeah, you do have to. Yeah.
The things that are at stake are different, specifically. So
I think what he's trying to suggest, they're trying to suggest there is so for example, someone makes a misplay in their round 5 and they're at the bottom of the pile, and it's only captured then. If someone at the bottom of the pile is doing that, they should be treated the same as the person at the top of the pile because they've done it for 5 games. But if it was captured earlier, it should maybe to me that's what I was kind of get. It feels like the severity of the punishment. It should be a yellow card either way, right?
I was very
until it scales. I don't know. It's just weird, right?
In saying that I don't have I can't my list of this is how the penalty scaling will work. I know it's hard. If it was easy, then I'd just be coming on the show and be like,
"Hey, guys,
here's my plan.
Using it. Yeah.
Here's my plan of penalising people for messing up." and I don't have that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's
not
it.
easy.
It is very difficult, I think.
it might be feels bad to say this game is more important than your game, but it's also sadly the truth.
Yeah, I think there's a situation there where it's also someone who is 4-0, 5-0 making mistakes has benefited from that with 4 or 5 wins, right? Whereas someone who's made a couple of errors in innocence and has lost a bunch of games, it's not had that same knock-on effect in terms of the people it's wronged and the experiences it's inflicted. But it is really difficult, and as Spacebug says, it is a social contract. And this is something Logan and I agree on very strongly. It's a collaborative social contract. There's been some love in the chat for maybe points deductions as a way of doing it. In event, that is ultimately the one that would have the best effect, I think. And as Valentin says, reputation does come into it as well, right? So it's really, really hard. Really hard.
The last bit of that isn't true though. So
We've watched bad eggs repeatedly get kind of
bad
told off
pennies
for things.
keep turning up.
They keep appearing. They keep being found on the bottom of the bag.
Yeah, so that is the challenge, and that ultimately is with attendance. That is the situation we're in, where there are ill-reputed players.
You guys run events though, right? So like, what's your experience with that?
So far, we have had, I think, 0 issues. We have my good mate Adam, who did his crew wrong, didn't he, John? Once.
Oh my God!
We had to tell him
he actually sold the army in shame.
Yeah, he resurrected some crew talks with his strat in hunting pack, and he knew he couldn't, or he forgot and he couldn't. But we've had very few incidents. But that is an example of where I think the community expectation there is really high, and the attention on people is really high. And I think it sort of self-polices as a result, but we're also very on it. But it wouldn't take much, right? I think we've not yet been confronted with how do we deal with a genuine problem individual who is also causing problems in their games at the event.
I think that's the difference between essentially a grassroots event being run by people that are near enough volunteers like we were to this kind of pseudo-professional thing we're now seeing, where they're saying they're professional, they're paying people to do part of the job, but it's not quite there because it's still in its ugly kind of teething thing where they're trying to do everything right, but you can't because, like you pointed out, if you've got 5 judges and 500 players, they can't have them all at the 250 tables at any one time. It's impossible. And I think that's where kind of like, if you're going to say and kind of put it as a business, it needs to be perhaps done better in that respect.
I feel like,
is the horrible truth of it, right?
I guess also in you guys' situation, like the more community orientated the event is, rather than it being a product like the UKDC is, the more community is invested in making sure that the atmosphere at that event and the competitive spirit is preserved more. Completely. They're more invested in it,
completely. And that's where it's a bit like you were saying. I think I come back to this on all of this, which is like, if service is at the heart of what people are doing in the game rather than extraction of money from people, then it's always easier. Like if a TO's main goal, I'm going to take Lewis for Saffron. I like to think we did this with ours, right? Our primary goal there is make an awesome event for people that they want to go to. If some money gets made, that's great, but it wasn't really our main driver, and it certainly wasn't what we were prioritizing in terms of how we lined things up or how we made sure how many people we had on the site or whatever, or prizes we were giving away or whatever else.
I love that. You said that last episode as well about extraction, and I think if you and your results end up as being a pathway into service and sharing the skill set that get you those results, that's positive. If your results are a method of extraction and personal financial gain, then obviously that is not really the environment that we want to foster for what is essentially two people cooperating
100%.
to make a jumbled mess of rules stack on top of each other without collapsing like a Jenga block.
Completely. I always think of the Polish kind of WTC team players, the kind of greats in that way as well, in as much, they put these pyro events on, they host all of the newbie internationals, they make loads of effort on the content sphere to kind of put across the European game. They're massive representatives in all of those different ways, and there's just a lot of hard work and giving that they do, and especially for communities which are actually lesser known in 40k. And sort of going over there for Pyro the one time I did, and just watching how much effort they put in and how involved they are, and how much of that is pretty much, just for just for the community of it all and the story of it all and the kind of the mythos of it. And Pyra is something that they've kind of built out of that. I think is really, really impressive, and it's quite unique compared to just another big serial event, right?
Well, you see the way in which the international community rallies around being part of it, and
yes,
you're able to convince the Yanks to fly in, pretty much the entirety of Europe to go there. It has become one of the pinnacles, like alongside, I guess, home nations.
Yes.
Even just you look at the way that the Team USA is building their yearly approach, and I'm sure England's the same, whereas you're not just focusing everything on a WTC performance, it's more like a continual Team England squad roster that represents at events throughout the season, and you can get more longevity that way.
And it involves now so much work to build the kind of community around it, right? And we've had tons of events and tons of players and tons of people involved, where it's like them representing at WTC has been probably not really on the cards at any stage, but they've had an amazing time in the process. They've learned a lot. They've met people. They've got to play with different people. I took people who were brand new on my team to Prestige when we did that, and some of them, had very tough events and learned hard lessons, but they all came away super enthusiastic. I've seen some of those players go on. They're doing better. They're out in the world. I want to shout out Chapman who was playing his Chaos Cults. He's now on his Sisters. He's having a great time out there in the world, I've seen lately. So that's really, really cool. And it's about giving and building beyond that, right? And again, I guess the international teams are the same. You don't want those becoming like commercial enterprises. That all starts getting very murky and very mucky very quickly. So we've got to tread very carefully around that. We've got a comment from Mike Roberts who says, I very much agree that money for winning in this game can't work. I'm curious what you all think about the bet around Folger Piles and his performance with Imperial Agents. He went very deep with Imperial
Agents. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's like full-on community activation,
Yeah. This is the story, right? He's done it for the mythos and the story, and Folger's a great guy. And it's just awesome to see that work.
And saying things around Brian Sipe obviously is also financially beneficial if you can drag him into a bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I say I like that tattoos, stories, all that stuff.
That looked sick as well.
It did. It looked really good. It looked really, really good.
And this kind of loops round to when you were kind of saying about what people want from an event. When you come back from it, there's cool stories. It's not, I got 3-2 and I scored this in this game. It's they tell you a cool story about what happened. Like, people will come out of that and go, I got to play against Folger, but he brought this list, and it'll all be about these interactions. And that's much more interesting than going, he turned up with Necrons, he just sat on some circles and beat me. Cool.
I very much like how these days as well, there's so many more names that people are excited to play against.
Yes.
Where people, obviously loads more people are doing content, but someone like Folger doesn't do a huge amount of content, if at all. I don't think. I know he coaches for Art of War, but
he's a lot less present for them, although more so these days because some of them are too busy.
But it's great that someone who just based off their results and just based off their reputation as a good player and a positive player is someone that people can be excited to get the opportunity to play against, even if you do get your shit pushed in 3 turns and go and get beers afterwards. It's a nice story to go home and tell your friends, in the same way that with open bracket tournaments in fighting games, someone can fly into Vegas and they get to play Daigo Umehara second round and get absolutely slapped, and they can go off and tell their buddies that they got beaten by one of the most legendary players in fighting game history. That's really cool as well, and I love that open bracket format that we also have here in Warhammer.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's a future where, as I say, anyone is excited to play against these top players. There's lots of learning and exchange going on, and that, as I say, what I don't really want us to lose is the ecosystem where all levels of players are included in the same events in the same halls. I think there's a lot of value to that. You can have a few like masters or international things, but also I think it's really nice that the main circuit is a complete bag of friends who have different abilities, right?
And that feeds back into the thing we're talking about having choice and options. We need to maintain both. I don't want to just be like, okay, well, all we have is the WCW and it's invite only, and these are the people that have won the golden ticket and they're the only ones that matter. Well, no, we have open events that anyone can go to. You've got people that turn up and they've got nameplates and stories about every unit in their army that they can talk about. And you've got people there that are absolute cutthroat killers, but will play with a smile on the face and they'll talk you through everything you did wrong afterwards, and you'll go off a better player for the spanking. So yeah, it's a great experience.
That's exactly right. No, very, very exciting. I think that's probably us for this evening. I think we've covered the ground I really wanted to cover. So, Logan, it's been an absolute pleasure. You have been exactly as insightful and thought-provoking as I knew you would be. So hopefully we can have you on again one day in the not too distant future, maybe when we've got some 11th running about that we can all reflect on. That'd be quite exciting.
Yeah, maybe I'll get to more than 3 tournaments a year and actually
that would be awesome.
Of value to
You've got one coming up. What more do you
Maybe
want?
we can use 11th as a springboard and make you play some more events and see how you go.
You can
We said that for 10th.
use a test case.
Yeah, that'd be great. Exactly. Yeah, you can be our experimental.
I'll gladly accept coaching, and I'll do a testimonial for you, wherever you like. Go for it.
Perfect. We've got some love in the chat for Logan. Valentine asked, does Logan have a channel? Anywhere else people can find you, Logan?
Yes.
So I do actually do a podcast.
Oh, amazing.
I've started doing for Warhammer related stuff with 2 of my friends that work within the creative industry called Engage on All Fronts.
Amazing.
We basically talk
good.
about our love of Warhammer from all of the aspects of it, because this isn't the only podcast I've been on in recent years, actually.
No.
No, I was on the Paint's Perspective podcast, because I also I just love excellence in this hobby. So
Yeah.
I love all of it. Like I love
frustrating.
painting, I love converting, I love sculpting, I love well written lore, I love all of it, and that's what our podcast's about. We actually did an episode that we recorded the other day that will go up soon about the new edition dropping and what that means to people from different avenues of the hobby, because of course, if you play the game competitively, a new edition means all of the new rules to learn.
Yes.
But what does it mean if you're, just someone who just collects miniatures? What does it mean to you? It's just a new box. If you don't collect orcs or space marines, do you really care? So that way, the lore advances with each edition. So there's all different ways in which a new edition coming out can be of value or not to people from all different types of the hobby. So that's what we spoke about, and we generally talk about that as much as possible. We're going to be going to some events this year. Salute. We're going to be going to a couple of MPOs. I'll be in the paying customers at Salute, unfortunately. I didn't get my press pass, but yeah, I want to do more vlogs and get to more events and just engage with the hobby on as many fronts as possible.
Yeah, 100%. No, super
He's
involved.
engaging on all fronts.
Yeah, there we
Well
go.
branded.
Perfect.
Whoa.
I think that's something that after the summer I'll be looking to do quite aggressively myself. So I'm going to add that podcast to my roster immediately, because I've been looking for a new one.
Yeah, my favourite episode was when we were arguing about how many times you'd stripped and repainted the same Lamarties. I think it was Lamarties. It was just great.
Oh, the Martys.
Competing
What a
about
boy.
painting. It's this weird alien
What a
thing.
boy. Yeah. Fantastic. Right, that is us. Scrivo, thanks also for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it, as
That's
always.
right.
And thanks to all of you for listening. It's been really, really good fun. We will see
Thank you
you
so
all
much for
again.
having me, man. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Been really.
I missed you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just nice. It's nice to hear the voice again and
I
get the
only talk to
insight.
you every day, Scrivo. God,
Shut up. They don't know that.
Alrighty, we'll call it there then. Good night, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Bye bye.